This is something I say to a lot of people. You've got to have a reality check when you sell your business because you will always think it's worth more than it is.
There's a big issue with owner dependency in a business where, someone's been running a business for 30 years and everything goes through them and they run everything. And then there aren't enough systems in place for someone to come in and say, okay, I can take this over and this can run.
I always think of it, what would you want to see if you were buying a business? So you want to see all the sales, who your customers are, what they sell, how they sell it. If you don't have that information that you can just extract, it becomes quite unsettling for a buyer.
The goal with Exit Strategy is to create an educational platform that helps business owners and founders develop skills that will help them get their businesses sold.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Exit Strategy Secrets. Today I'm joined by Simone Musgrave, an entrepreneur with a remarkable track record of building and exiting successful businesses. Simone is the founder of Musgrave Gin, including South Africa's first pink gin, and has a wealth of experience in taking ideas from concept to market and eventually to an exit. So I'm very excited to have you on the show today. Welcome, Simone.
Thank you very much.
All right. So I think just to kick us off, I'm sure everyone's excited to unpack your story about Musgrave Gin, but I'd love to get a little bit of background on yourself and on your entrepreneurial journey that you can share with us.
Sure. I feel like it's been quite a jump from one thing to the other, but I guess it started for me when I actually had a language school business. So that was the first thing I probably did. I studied linguistics and African languages, and then headed off to the UK and started to explore the world of teaching English to foreign adults. And soon came back pregnant to South Africa, and I decided to start a summer school, which was very short-lived, although I did have a few students come from Prague and from China and from a few other places, and I sat in the game farm and taught them English for a few months. But, so that was really the first. But I soon had a baby, and then another baby, and headed to New Zealand, where I actually gave birth to my second child. And while I was there, I really was struck by the incredible childcare. There wasn't a lot that I loved the country for, but having a child there was great, and also the food that was served to children and available to moms. So a year there, I decided South Africa is still calling me. I came home and I started a baby food business. But I really did it because I couldn't find anything else to feed my children. And I started to make baby food at home. And then I built a factory and I supplied over 100 Pick n Pay stores and Baby City nationally. And that was, I always say, was my degree in retail, food and branding and distribution and logistics. I made no money out of it, but I was way before my time in terms of innovation. But I definitely learned so much. I then sold the business to my arch enemy, which is why I started the baby food, Purity Baby Food. And that was sort of really because I was irritating them in the trade. So that was another step in that process where the deal I got there was not so much a cash payout, but a takeover of my brand, that my label went off and Purity's label went on. And I got a year's manufacturing contract with them. So that was kind of a different exit, I guess. And essentially, they took over that product as a test market for them. So a lot of learnings and a lot of network building during that time. I actually had Raymond Ackerman as sort of on speed dial supporting me throughout that journey. I won a business plan competition based on the baby food, which took me into the Pick n Pay market. So a really rich time of learning, although it was pretty tough. Had racing around with babies in the car, delivering baby food and frozen baby food at those days. And that was like sort of 2001. So that was the beginning of my entry, I guess, into retail, food, and corporate. From then on, the guys who had helped me set up my baby food factory sort of said, well, we really need someone to represent us. They were the exclusive suppliers to Woolworths Foods. And they were based in Pretoria, but they needed someone to sit in Cape Town, actually sit on the Woolworths foods floor and represent innovation, key accounts, etc. So it was a good time for me. I headed off to Cape Town with my two little girls, and I sat on the Woolworths foods floor for quite a while. And within that business, it went from the lifestyle business, which was acquired by Food Corp, which are brands that everyone knows, Yum Nums, Omar Russ, Bobtail, Catmore, Dogmore, um, a whole lot of products from Hyman's Pantry all the way to spreads and mayonnaise. So I represented them, and I got really great opportunities within that acquisition. The CEO, Justin Williams, said, we want to create an innovation center that no one's created in South Africa, and go and create the impossible, Simone. So it was an amazing opportunity, a bit terrifying, but I set up the 7th Floor Innovation Center in Cape Town, which really was a groundbreaking space. It was a space that had I had to make no money for the business. All I had to do was deliver innovation. And part of the job was to travel and eat around the world. And I know this story because it's
Dream.
really bad, right?
Yeah.
And I would say, my CEO would say, go to South America and tell us what's happening in bakery over there. So those are the kind of things I did. And it's really, I tell the story because it set up why I was able to spot trends, and especially the gin trend, and the craft trend. So that was my 10-year journey with Food Corp when it was acquired now by Rainbow Chicken, which then became RCL Foods. And that was sort of when things started to change. The commodity guys, the chicken guys had bought the big branded business, but they wanted everyone to sit at their home in Durban. And so I chose not to go, and which meant retrenchment for me. So it took a while, but that was sort of when the Musgrave story started to come in, is I don't want to go back into corporate. In many ways, the role I had was very entrepreneurial, because we had to initiate ideas, create ideas, implement them into the business. And the thought of sitting in a corporate structure that outside of that wasn't really that attractive to me. So my entrepreneurial spirit was always really fed and supported within a corporate environment for so long. And within that, I also had vast amount of retail contacts. I traveled to innovation shows with ShopRite guys and the Spa guys. So it was a very rich time and a lot of creativity as well.
Wow, that's a really amazing. That's incredible stories. You really have traveled a lot and really innovated in the food space. What was your favorite country that you traveled to?
I think the most fascinating for me, and it sounds, it was a surprising to me, was South America, and with specifically Mexico. So we wandered around the markets within Mexico City. We always had consultants who took us around, showing us, talking through us through products. But within Mexico, there's so many small little groups of cultural difference that the food is completely complicated. We go down to our sort of Tex-Mex restaurant in Cape Town, but when you go there, it's completely different and very, very complex. Each little group has their own way of making something. Um, yeah, so that for me, that Mexico came back surprisingly some of the most interesting developments that I saw.
Yeah, yeah, I went there I think 3 years ago, and I was blown away by how, like, simple the tacos are, but, like, how tasty they are, They don't put a lot of things in. It's, like, just a little bit of meat and a little bit of guac, but they all taste completely different.
Yeah,
And
ingredients, and yeah, so that was really interesting.
yeah, so I guess when you started Musgrave, which might be different to some other founders, is that you already had, a couple of entrepreneurial ventures behind you. You'd actually gone through some exit processes. Did you come into Musgrave thinking, I'm going to build this company and eventually exit it?
I always started Musgrave to exit. So, I mean, I started it by accident, and I didn't really have a plan. I just hoped that something would happen or it kept me busy. And it took them 18 months to retrench me. So I was a single mom with two little girls. I had to kind of make a plan. So I kind of started this as a way to say, well, let me try something while I'm waiting to be retrenched. I didn't really know if it would work. To be honest, I had no business plan. I saw a trend, the gin trend, and I saw the craft trend. I thought that's quite interesting. I've got this family story that I'd always wanted to do something with until use it as a story and a brand. So I just sort of started it. I guess the hope was always to make it work, but a year down the line, I launched our second product, our pink product, which really was the meat of the business. I always say if I didn't launch pink, I wouldn't have had a business. And and then that's when I started to say, well, this is where I want to go. I want to eventually sell this. So I guess it was a year into my first product being launched that I believed that this brand had some meat to it.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. I mean, I spent, a long period of time in my own business working without having any kind of exit strategy. And I think, when you run a business, often you're just running a business. You don't really think about the end result and, what you need to do to get a great outcome. Do you think that knowing that in the beginning changed the way that you set up the company, in terms of, how you built it? Were there certain decisions that you took that kind of led you to that path?
I don't think no, I don't think that I changed. It was a crazy, crazy journey. We were growing 650% month on month. There was nothing I could do to just I was just in survival mode pretty much the whole time, which is great, right? So you're selling a lot of products, people love the brand. But what I always did was consistently, and it was like there was no one who was going to take me in any brand direction other than the one I knew I had to be with Musgrave. So my brand was always consistently portrayed. When retailers wanted to cut the price, it was absolute no. When the brand, if the label was too expensive, how do we cheapen the label? No. The bottle's getting expensive. No. So my brand was where I put all the consistency and work in, and which essentially it is the brand that I was going to sell anyway, because we contract manufactured, we contract bottled, we contract marketed. We really were just a brand. And so the only thing that I knew I had to do was keep that brand at the level that people would want to buy it. And I guess that drove pretty much every other decision. So, I'm actually quite useless when it comes to financial stuff and all of that stuff. I had people doing that. And the structure of the business was quite simple.
What
There was
was
not
the structure of the business? Did you have partners in the beginning? Did you use your own money, or did you get capital to sort of set up the initial operations?
I always owned the business 100% myself. I took money out my bond to buy the first pallet of bottles and labels. And along the way, I had a little bit of cash flow help from my father, which was paid back quite soon. But I remember it was actually a mentor who worked with me in the food industry and helped me set up the baby food factory. And Alan James was always there to a panicked phone call. And I said to Alan, why don't, I phone you so much and ask for help. Why don't you become a partner? And he said, absolutely not. You need to keep this to yourself. If you need a loan, I'll give you a loan, but this is your business and you keep it. And I'm so grateful for that. And, down the line, when I mentor young entrepreneurs, I always say, try, keep it for yourself. Um, so I was very lucky, but we were also we had no overheads really. We didn't have. I worked in the beginning. I worked in an office at the bottom of my house. We didn't have to have a distillery because we had a contract distillery. So I didn't really have to invest in machinery. The only thing I had to invest in was stock, which
Yeah.
was, and I purchased all the bottles and the labels myself, and I did that as I could sell them. So we held enough stock for every month. And so we were never, ever in debt. We never had a loan. We had a small loan account with my father, which was dipping into when we had a bit of cash flow, which was due to growth. But our business was actually very simple, and actually that's what saved us in COVID as well. We had no overheads, virtually none. We had a few.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that's really smart, to kind of manage your costs very well in case of kind of an emergency. I mean, no one could have predicted COVID, and some people did really well, accelerated their businesses, but other businesses, everything stopped. So yeah, well done on keeping it nice and tight during that period of time. I have a couple of questions about the business. So obviously, there's going to a bottle store and you see gin for sale, but how do you actually sell an alcohol brand in a sort of saturated market?
So the appetite was for the brand, and big companies you'll see won't develop brands; they will line extend. So this was a classic case. For example, Yum Yum peanut butter, which I worked on for years. They had the best number one peanut butter in the market, and all they did was add crunchy, super crunchy chocolate, caramel, etc. And that's a lot of what big businesses will do. So the big liquor business find it very hard to launch a brand. It's also very, very expensive for them to launch a brand. So, so the liquor space is one of those areas where acquisitions are quite prolific. They're looking for young, sort of entrepreneurial brands with real stories that really resonate. And if you look back at many of these alcohol brands, they were all started by small businesses with stories. So, so I think that's the interesting part about a liquor brand. Um, the question is, how do you sell it? You've got to do the work on the brand so that people notice you all the time, and you start taking sales away from their brands. And Musgrave did that. We were the first pink. No one had done a pink gin in South Africa before. Everyone followed it, but no one did it actually properly. So the color was wrong, or the brand didn't work, or it was a rush job, or it didn't taste good, or it wasn't the first. We were the first. So I think that being the first is already going to be something that sets you up for any interest if they are looking to buy.
So how long did you run this business before you eventually exited it?
So I launched our very first gin in 2015 on World Gin Day in June. And then a year later, we launched Pink. And I had my very first discussions with acquirers in 2019. And then everything stopped, of course, for COVID.
Oh, right.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. And then we picked those conversations up again, sort of end of 2021, early 2022. And,
Okay.
you know,
Okay. So it
yeah.
was quite a journey.
Yeah, it's quite a journey. I think I would have exited in 2019 when our business was at its peak. But then, Cyril decided that he'd stop all that for everyone. So there was obviously, and it actually changed the liquor game forever. In 2 years, we had 1 day in 3 to trade. So the fallout afterwards were retailers were trying to catch up all those years, and the liquor game just completely changed.
That's super interesting. Yeah, I think COVID had a big impact on the world.
Yeah.
And a lot of businesses, yeah, it's like a strange route to recovery, actually. Even though it's so far behind us, there's still like imprints of it here and there
Exactly.
in different
And I always
industries.
say, the many people couldn't trade and their businesses were decimated. But when your business becomes an illegal business, it's quite a mind shift. So I think the liquor trade, sort of had to do so much work on reputation, and that affect obviously how the retailers were looking at the customer. It's a whole new set of conversation post COVID on where Musgrave is placed. But there wasn't really another gin brand to buy. So in that way, our brand consistency that I was absolutely religious about it, was still upheld, even though we had gone through so much the brand itself was still desired because of its values and how we had always represented Musgrave.
We've recently partnered with Kaya Creative Studios, who are just helping us put this whole project together, making it seamless for us.
Partnering with Kaya really feels aligned to our mission and our integrity of our brand. They really do have a full array of podcast-related services and products. The Kaya team have the experience, they have the insights, they have the understanding and the full medium to really help a brand kind of grow.
If you're listening to the show and you're interested in starting a podcast or making it part of your branding marketing strategy, you should get in touch with Kaya. It's an excellent service. Hope to make some amazing content out there.
So what do you think, like, pre-exit were some of the biggest challenges that you personally faced building the business, and how did you overcome them?
I think for me it was more not so much the structure of the business or what the financials looked like. There was also an understanding that post-COVID our financials were a bit of a mess anyway. Who knows what they were revealing. So there was almost license to not focus so much on that. Of course, you had to look at what the value of the business was and how does one value that. And in liquor, it generally is valued on gross turnover. So that was the general, sort of consensus, is that in liquor brands, we valued on gross turnover. So it was quite simple. That's the number regardless. We know for 2 years things have been really tough. So we're not going to really delve in too much into the financials. We're just going to look at what is the turnover now. And so from a valuation point, it was actually quite simple. Of course, when you're a business owner, you always think your business is worth more than it is. And in fact, Musgrave was worth double, to be honest. It was worth double in 2019. But the reality is, post-COVID, it was halved. And so I think for me, the biggest challenge was coming to terms with that. And this is something I say to a lot of people. You've got to have a reality check when you sell your business, because you will always think it's worth more than it is.
I just want to stop on this point because this is, I think, such an important thing to unpack. I've spoken to a lot of business owners and my own personal experience thinking that, the company is just worth so much more, not really understanding valuation, from a financial point of view. And then, in some ways sabotaging my own ability to exit or bring on a partner because of an inflated view of valuation. So, it is quite an interesting thing, I think, to help entrepreneurs and business owners understand so that, you can move past that emotional block when you're thinking of selling your business. So, how did you sort of come to terms with that and, process the value of what you built?
So my deal was so there was an evaluation, but then there was potential for an earnout. So I accepted that was what it was. You can't deny it. The numbers show it. So you really have to, as I say, have a reality check. That's what the numbers are showing. You can't just say emotionally because I love the brand and it's pretty, it's worth more. So that's the number that we had got to. But if I chose those buyers, they offered huge muscle to grow the brand. So that's what I was looking for. I was looking to stay in the business for a while, to be the marketing arm, but the manufacturing, I needed to scale up, the distribution, the ability to do trade deals, the muscle that a big business offers. I couldn't really grow Musgrave any more than I had with the structure I had of contract manufacturing, contract bottling, etc. So I had the initial valuation with the potential for earnout. And I think that's how I came to terms with I would be able to extract more value down the line.
Right.
Unfortunately, it didn't actually work like that, because it's the same story many entrepreneurs talk about in an earnout where, yeah, your first date is amazing, but then a year down the line, the relationships, you've realized they're actually psychopathic killers. So it's that sort of that sort of thing.
That's a very good point. And another thing that I really want to unpack in this episode is, the negotiation of the deal. So maybe we can take a step back and go, okay, there came a point where you said, okay, I'm starting to have conversations with acquirers. I'm sure you spoke to a few different brands or companies. Maybe you can talk us through, how did you get to that point where you chose a company that you thought was the right fit? Did you speak to quite a few different parties? Did you bring on an M&A advisor to help you with the process? How did you really go through that from the beginning?
So when I was ready to say, okay, I really want to start, we're at the peak here. I know that I need to scale up in a different way and I need a partner involved in this or to sell outright. I approached, I'm a member of Entrepreneurs Organization, and there was always a lot of access to this kind of information is how do you sell your business? One of the members was Benchmark, which is an M&A company. And he had done a talk in our forum, and I thought, okay, well, there's a lot of trust within the EO environment, and I'd rather go with someone who has the same value, trust, and where I can almost speak like I know nothing. So there was a lot of feeling of safety going with someone that I knew. So I started to have a conversation with them, and there was there was definitely a feeling from me was, wow, this is quite a process. I do need support here. I'm not going to do this on my own. I'd had casual conversations through my network with Distel and with DGB. Those were just coffees, and I didn't really know how to take it further. And I also felt like I don't know the valuation process. Financially, I'm not that strong. I really need that support. So I enlisted Benchmark, where they took me through quite a lot of conversations with Distel. And then those sort of all stopped, right? So then there was this pause for 2 years. And we then started again where we put our pitch together, all the processes you go through with an M&A company, I guess. We set up a data room. We started putting information into the data room. We started getting a profile. They started reaching out to buyers. And interestingly, through that, I actually had more links to relevant buyers than they did. So I wouldn't say they found me the buyer. I probably found the buyer through my network because it's quite a small set of companies within South Africa. Internationally, there wasn't much appetite to buy a South African brand anyway. So they didn't really find my buyer, but they helped me and guided me through all the stuff that's needed to share. And I think that data room is quite intimidating when they start asking you for this spreadsheet and that spreadsheet and sales, and you have to then kind of extract that information. So for them to help me through what is actually needed, what is the line of sight that's needed was very helpful. So
Also, for people or business owners who are not aware of what a data room is, and it is a very important part of the exit process, and I often tell people, it's important to get your data room set up early. How would you describe it to someone who hasn't heard the term before?
I always think of it, what would you want to see if you were buying a business? So you want to see all the sales, ideally from the beginning, and the trajectory of sales, who your customers are, and drilling down into that detail, who they are, what they sell, how they sell it, how many units, how's it split, by what month, by what day, by what season. So it's sort of drilling down into sales information over time. Now, when we started, we didn't have any systems in place, but very soon we did. So we used Xero and Dia as a compatible system, as an inventory system, an accounting system. So we actually were quite well positioned in our numbers that we could just extract this information quite easily. So I would say, investing in systems as early as you can, and it's hard because you don't have the cash flow necessarily to do that. So it's 20 grand a month, but it sets you up for later because I didn't have the ability to go and track all those sales unless I had a system. It was complicated. How many, we had 40 components that made up this product. from corks to labels to drill into your costs, your cost of sales, and then your sales, and then who you sold to and how. Um, if you don't have that information that you can just extract, it becomes quite unsettling for a buyer because they can't see. Now, in a business, Musgrave was only 5 years old and before COVID. So, we're looking at probably the 5 years. After the first year, I got some systems in place. And that really helped us extract the numbers that made our business sort of information rich. And you can't tell a buyer you sold this much to Pick and Pay if you don't have the numbers to back it up. They don't care. They want to see the numbers. They want to see the spreadsheets. So data is, for me, so important going into this process. They couldn't dispute my data. And so that helped with the final deal price. So I would say that data room is something, you're probably not going to set it up yourself as you're running your business. But if you've got the systems that are recording that information, that's kind of your data room anyway. So that's
really
it is something
really good advice.
you can prepare for. And exactly like the systems that we run this podcast on. There's so many available. The AI stuff is coming fast and furious. Yes, they do cost, but there's basic ones you can upgrade all the time, but you still have a set of data.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so to use that tech in your business.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's critical, especially for smaller businesses, to have good systems in place where, someone who's looking to buy the company can see that, once they take it over, that there's structure, they can manage the business without you. There's a big sort of issue with owner dependency in a business where someone's been running a business for 30 years and everything goes through them and they run everything, and then there aren't enough systems in place for someone to come in and say, okay, I can take this over and this can run. So it is quite critical to get those in place, and like you say, it can increase the value when you're negotiating. So then you set up the data room with Benchmark. You started having conversations with different buyers. What happened next?
So we soon sort of narrowed down that we were going to get offers from 2 buyers and quite different businesses. Obviously, I knew both of them. In fact, the one business had approached me a couple of years before. I'd always had conversations with both the CEOs. So we knew that would be coming through. It was around the biggest frustration for me was the timeline. So firstly, we were post-COVID. Everyone was fixing their business in the liquor space. And to just get people to respond to an email, so Benchmark played a role in chasing that up and in the right way as well, and finessing that process so that you're not irritating the buyer. And behind the scenes, a lot of those small little conversations were held by Benchmark, not me. So, are they going to buy all the stock in your warehouse? Little things like that. And what's that value? And then getting that information. So a lot of little conversations around the practicalities of what the deal could look like. And that was all done by Benchmark. So we eventually drew up a structure that for both these deals that they were happy with, that both the buyers were happy with. And then we waited for that to be sort of signed off, I guess.
So did you present both of them with the same structure, like this is what we want, not waiting for them to give you an offer?
We presented them with what I wanted and where we saw the valuation sitting. This was after discussions with them. It didn't come out of nowhere. So we knew kind of where one company was going, and we kind of knew where the other one was going. One didn't want me involved at all, and they wanted to buy the brand outright, and I walk away. The other company wanted me to, it was an earn-out, so they would keep me on for 3 years. And so it was then up to me to say, which of these deals do I see as the right fit? At that time, I still felt I had a role to play, and that I still wanted to influence the trajectory of the brand and caretake the brand. So I ended up sort of moving more towards the earn-out deal than the other deal, which is actually in the end what happened. Is I went down the path of saying, well, because of COVID and our decimation of our business, it gives me a chance to extract more value, and I wanted to do more things. I thought Musgrave still had a revival after COVID. I still felt that I'm the name on the bottle and I sell the brand better than anyone else, and they felt that too. And I still had some work to do, and that's why I chose that deal. So it was very much conversations that came in. This is what they wanted, and then what my intention was for myself. And Benchmark managed that in between space to get to that point where I could say, okay, I choose A, not B.
And was that the earnout seems to be a point of negotiation, and maybe it can be subjective. How did you go about negotiating that earnout structure? And if you could go back, like, what would you change about that?
So there was a bit of to and froing. I think that the earnout structure was quite fair. There was a royalty structure, and then there was a purchasing structure. So our deal was centered around sort of purchasing different percentages over the 3 years, whereas the other company was 100% outright. The numbers were quite similar, initial numbers. The upfront numbers were quite similar. So it was quite nice for me to have that. So I wasn't choosing, more money if I walked away or less money if I stayed. The numbers was quite similar because the valuation is the valuation. I think what was the determining factor was my emotional place within my business, where I felt I needed to be still. So without Benchmark finessing those conversations, I think it would have been very intimidating, and I would have felt unsafe. So I felt having the Benchmark team there, where they got my back. They were trying to get me the best deal, and they were also the most realistic voice I had to sort of sense check everything. So I actually had very few of those conversations myself, and Benchmark had most of them.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing. When you're negotiating, you kind of need a third party to find the meeting of the minds, where there's less emotion involved, more
Yep.
logic, and you can, substantiate, your valuations and your earnouts on metrics and on brand. And
Yep.
I'm sure there were a lot of conversations within your business around the value of the brand. You mentioned quite a lot earlier in the podcast how you focused on brand, and it seems in your case, brand was an edge,
Yep.
and it's sort of intangible relative to valuation of financial metrics, right? So, I'm sure you had lots of conversations around, well, this brand is going to add a lot of value to your,
Yep.
your wheelhouse of brands. How did you position that conversation in the negotiation?
I think the value of the brand was quite understood. We were discussing a liquor brand in the context of COVID. That was the tricky part, and that was something all of us had to be aware of. Is going forward, yes, the brand was. There's no doubt that Musgrave was the first pink. The brand is well known. We had incredible reach into the trade. We had good export. There was actually very little discussion around the value of the brand. They knew the value. That's why they wanted the brand. The discussion was more for me around the how that 3 years would look in a structure. And there's a lot of legal stuff that goes on. There's tax, there's legal stuff. And the Benchmark team have lawyers, and they have tax people, and they have all of that. So it was actually, they already knew the brand was great, which is why they wanted it. I didn't really have to convince them about that. I had to convince them, what does 3 years look like? And I do think I've learned a lot around, I do think there should have been a lot more in place to protect those 3 years, which is why I stepped away after 1 year.
So how did that work exactly? You obviously have an agreement in place that's a 3-year earnout, where they're purchasing, percentages of your company along the 3 years,
Yeah.
if I'm correct. And so there must have been a clause in the term sheet that said, okay, well, if you walk away after a period of time, something happens. Was that the case?
So how our deal was structured was the first year I owned the brand 100%, and they extracted all the stock and the bottles and the labels, etc. So everything that was sitting in the business was purchased by them. And I owned the brand 100% for the first year. I got a royalty, and then I marketed the brand. They would distribute, manufacture, trade. I did no sales, essentially. I just marketed the brand. In the second year, they would buy 49%, and the third year, the rest. And after the first year, I very quickly saw I was able to make no decisions. I couldn't spend any marketing money. They didn't want to spend any marketing money. There was a strategic decision in the business to keep Musgrave at a level. They didn't really want to grow it that much. And I could see the writing on the wall, is that there was no way to protect. I couldn't force them to sell more. So I could see it declining. I could see their approach to marketing was not mine. In fact, I look at the brand now, there is no brand marketing at all involved. It's simply a distribution trade space. And Musgrave is what it is because of the marketing. So I looked at this and thought, well, this is not looking good. In 3 years, I'm going to have less money than when I started.
Interesting.
So I had a clause in my deal that said if I brought a new deal to them by the 1st of, I think it was by the 15th of January, or it was a point in January, considering that the 49% would be purchased on the 1st of March. They would have first right of refusal of that deal, but they had to match whatever deal I brought. So I went back to the other guys, and the other guys who had offered me the once-off payment, and cheers, Simone. And I said, are you guys still interested? And they were. And I remember sitting the 2nd of January in the boardroom. It was load shedding, so there's no aircon in the room, having this conversation with that CEO. And we put the deal together, and we took it to the current guys that I was with, and said, I'm not happy. Here's a deal. Either you match it or I go with the other guys. And they felt that they'd invested in that too much to just walk away. And so they matched the deal. And I was out.
That is so interesting. I haven't heard of a structure like that before. And I guess, you mentioned you wish you had protected yourself better, but that was a really good clause. Like, did Benchmark advise you to put that in there?
They did. And in fact, I think the guys hadn't clocked that clause. I think there was quite a lot of, I don't want to call it arrogance, but it kind of was that, this would just be a great thing for them. That I don't think they'd really taken note of that, or that it would ever be implemented. There's some things in a legal contract you're like, oh, that's never going to happen. And I think it was kind of big for them. And so when it took one person shouting at me for me to say, I'm out. I don't get shouted at anymore. And I implemented that clause, and I'm very grateful. So I didn't get the earnout and double, triple my exit, but it was still a good exit, and it was still protected on the initial valuation. So I didn't lose from that, and I had the year of royalties as well before. They extracted all the stocks. I wasn't sitting with 100,000 labels I couldn't sell. So in many ways, it was quite neat and tidy. It was the best outcome for me, and I think for them too, in a way, because they then were able to decide and make all the decisions they needed to, and market the brand or sell the brand as they chose. So the relationship, and this is often what entrepreneurs say: we couldn't work with the people we sold to. It's not uncommon to say, "Oh, I can't. I can't be told what to do."
Yeah,
So
that's very true. It sounds like it was quite an emotional experience post the actual sale of the business. Essentially, so how did you manage your emotions? Like after signing this agreement, and it sounds like a bit of an up and down journey.
I was quite excited actually when I did the deal. COVID was probably the toughest time of my life. It felt so unjust that I was just excited to get back to business and have this muscle behind me to do all the things I wanted to do with Musgrave. And so it was quite an exciting time to start with, but I soon realized that it was not the team of people I could work with. So the business in my view, has no marketing capability, and they don't value high-end, beautiful brands. They are trade people. They sell gritty salespeople and manufacturing. And so over the weeks and the months when I started interacting with the teams, it's like they just didn't have the culture Musgrave had. So, we were a small business. We were very on hand, very on brand. We would nurture our relationships within the trade. We always stuck to the values that Musgrave sort of pushed out through the brand, and this company just wanted to sell volume. So over the weeks, and the kind of people that I was interacting with just didn't get it. And so I started to feel quite uncomfortable, and it was, I don't know if it was emotional as such. I just didn't want to deal with any more bullshit, frankly. I'd always guided my own decisions, my own life, my own brand, and now to be told that I didn't know what I was talking about wasn't a space I want to be in. And so I think it was less emotional than just saying, I don't need it. I don't need this. This is not why I sold, and I can't grow Musgrave within this environment. So if that's what I'm here for, and I can't do it, why am I here? The liquor game is very gritty. It's very male dominated. There's very few women you deal with along the line, and there's a lot of bullying in the industry. So from retail through to distributors, I think the only nice space really is the marketing space, if you have the decision-making power. So it was a reality check, and I think this process is about a lot of reality checks. I can't work with them. I knew that, and so how am I going to get out to my advantage? And luckily, working with a benchmark who were able to make sure legals and financials and everything was in place allowed me to do that. If I'd done this on my own, I probably would have got myself into a bit of shit. I think I was well protected, and that process was also handled by benchmark. So
Okay.
they came back in and then took me to the end. So I had them always there. Able to,
Yeah, I think you really do need that. I've spoken to a few people who've said to me, "No, I don't really need an advisor. I can definitely do this on my own." And I've often said, well, one, I think an advisor can help you negotiate a better deal, maybe improve the value, but also be a sounding board and a thinking partner throughout the process, after you come out of a meeting, to be able to debrief and just discuss it with somebody, and hear some different perspectives can be very, very valuable.
Yeah, and I think they also manage your emotion. They manage your emotion through legals, through tax, through finance, through the things that have to be in place, rather than those emotions can run with you. And this is your baby that you built. And if you just come back to the legal contracts, you find yourself in a much safer place where you actually get more in your power because you've got that structure.
Yeah. So that's such a great story. I really appreciate you opening up on on that level and sharing the intricacies of the deal. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to learn a tremendous amount from what you've shared. I'd love to just for the last few minutes talk about life post exit, because obviously things change, and your baby's gone and you've moved on. How did you sort of what did you do next after you sold the company?
I took a bit of time out, really just to process. I actually wrote a book, which I'm trying to finish now. And that was quite cathartic because I started to remember so much in the business. So it's going to be about Musgrave, about Simone, and my journey to entrepreneurship. Also very female centered around how one, structures a business within a very male dominated world. So I've done that, and hopefully I can finish that next year. Um, I also have taken on some consultancies. So I'm building a rum brand for a Mauritian sugar business, and that should launch next year. So that's been fun, and that's been really great because I don't know anything about rum, but I know a lot about liquor brands and the trade. And so I've been able to do the fun stuff and not have to worry about selling it. And then I'm looking to build a new. I'm trying to. I think the struggle for me has been, what am I actually interested in? I don't really want to get back in the liquor game. I have knowledge of it. How can I use that? But what is it that I really want to do? And I don't know. But I'm getting closer, and I think I've got a business concept that I'll probably launch next year. And it's feeling really, really right. And I've been trying to buy little businesses, but it hasn't flowed. And I think it's because it wasn't right. So it's been a journey just to figure out what is that next thing. I don't think I ever want to be that stressed again or even that busy. I just want to do something that is on brand for me and that leverages the current brand that I have in the trade. And we'll see where that goes.
Yeah,
So space.
yeah, yeah. I'm looking forward to the book. What is it called?
I'm going to call it It's Not About the Juice.
I like that. I like that. And in terms of your consulting services, how does that work exactly if someone's interested?
Yeah, so they can go to my website, simonemusgrave.com, and get hold of me through that. My email is simone@simonemusgrave.com, so very easy to remember. And I'm really enjoying working with little brands, small brands that need a facelift maybe, building new brands, the really interesting stuff, the stuff that you create that someone wants to buy one day. Um, I think that there's also brands that just need a facelift and they don't know how to do it. So, so those are the kind of things I'm looking at. Consulting is great because you can bring a different set of eyes, and I love bringing a sort of a new view to brands. I love beautiful products. I love luxury products, and it gives me that taste and that feel again of product. And so yeah, I mean, I'm open to. I've been working with a mohair yarn company, a rum, obviously the rum business. I've been working with completely sideline products, but they essentially are all beautiful products, and the approach doesn't change. So
Amazing. And I'm sure a few people will reach out. Thank you, Simone. That was a wonderful story. I have some really interesting takeaways. I mean, for me, the key things that stand out are, how you value a liquor business, which I think is different to, traditional businesses, which might be a multiple of profit, where here you're looking at turnover. And, I think for me, the really interesting part of this conversation is the earnout, how that was structured, how you negotiated that, and how you managed to get out of it when it wasn't comfortable for you. And I think that was a really interesting part of the exit process that I hadn't heard before. So yeah, very unique. And congratulations on selling your company. I mean, I think it's an incredible life achievement. It's something that, not many people are able to do. And it really is the essence of this show, to inspire people that it is possible to help business owners have insights to get to that place, and to really, help entrepreneurs find the freedom from the work that they've done throughout their journey. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you very much. It's always good to, sometimes you forget to talk it through again, and reminds you that, remind you of the achievement, to just keep pushing, because entrepreneurs are doing incredible things that people want. So thanks for the reminder.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening today, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.